Welcome to another episode of Falsehoods of Fitness. We're going to talk about training range of motion today. So, give it a couple minutes for everybody to show up. Everybody see my new X3 cup? This is Beyond. It's got a pair of superheroes. Notice the gentleman has no hair. That was my idea. So, okay, we'll wait for what we got. We got quite a few on Instagram. Instagram must be just easier to jump in and out of for most people. So I'll just give a brief on what we're going to be talking about, and then we'll sort of officially start it. Gregory, hey, how you doing? So what we keep running into in comments and questions is range of motion. Isn't it true that if you train one range of motion that you only get stronger in that one position and not in other positions? So there's a couple different ways to answer that. I mean, clearly that's a violation of like principles of human physiology, because you don't use all ranges of motion even when you lift or when you do anything. But that's what we're going to talk about, and then also talk about some research and then practical applications. So what we're going to be talking about has been well documented in one particular powerful study, which is authored by a guy I worked with when I was Chief Science Officer of PowerPlate, a guy named Swapan Mukherjee. He's the department head at University in Ohio, kinesiology department head. God, the name of the university is just escaping me at the moment, but like smartest guy when it comes to exercise physiology, just the best guy to hang out with. So I'll be reviewing that and then talking about the strength curve. You can probably see over the top of my head, I got a couple graphics. I realized I wouldn't show up on all cameras, so Chelsea was nice enough so I could do it on paper so you guys could see much better in the camera. All right.
Robert says hello.
Robert does?
Mm-hmm.
Robert.
From Fairmont.
Yeah, hey, Robert, how you doing? All right. So let's jump into it. Now, when you train a specific range of motion, is the adaptation only in that range of motion? Okay, just from like biology, high school, you know that the length of a cell, of a muscle cell, runs the entire length of the muscle. And so a cell is activated, it's activated. It's just a matter of how short that cell gets. There's actin and myosin. There are two types of filaments inside of these cells, and they come together or they don't. And the amount of those microfilaments that come together is the shortening of the muscle. So, I contract my bicep, like it's short, it's long here, so they're shortening, but it's not like I'm not engaging the muscle when it's in its lengthened position or whatever. So what we need to look at is the fact that functionally, I always reference the term functional fitness as one of the most overused and misused terms, but we choose to use ranges of motion when we have to get like a task done, as opposed to saying I'm going to lift a static weight through a given range of motion. So for example, a sprinter uses 7 degrees of flexion behind their knee. So you have 180 degrees of range of motion in your knee joint. But when you need to run fast, you only use 7. Why? It's because that's the range of motion that is efficient. The muscle, the quadricep, is at its shortest, therefore you have access to the most muscular tissue. So you can engage the cell to a higher degree. So it's not really you're engaging one little part of the muscle and it's different parts of the muscle when the muscle's shorter. It's the same muscle that's engaging, it's just the degree of engagement that happens in that stronger range of motion. So you see sprinters, and the idea that a sprinter is only getting stronger in that 7 degrees of motion, if that were true, then a sprinter wouldn't be able to get out of a chair very well, because when their knee is at 90 degrees, when you're sitting in a chair and you get up out of the chair, you have no strength, right? Oh, but they're incredibly strong in all ranges of motion. So it completely translates as long as the stronger range is fatigued, which is why sprinters have such powerful leg strength. And I can't say this about all sprinters, but typically sprinters don't squat because they don't want to fire those muscles in a different pattern. They want to train. Now they do drills, they do high knees and stuff, but that has to do with flexibility. That doesn't have to do with like firing the muscle. It's another thing we get. Well, they do it with high knees. Like, that's not a strengthening event. That's a range of motion stretching type activity. So based on well, first, to dispel that myth completely, there's a 1999 study by Swapan Mukherjee, the guy I mentioned earlier, and then one of his students, Nick Radamus. And Mukherjee and Radamus in 1999 did a fixed bench press joint angle. So they're bench pressing just in a very short range of motion. And what they did is they had people training in just this short range of motion, very short repetitions, and they tried to get it to where they'd go to failure in just this range of motion. And then they would go back to full range training to do a post-test after a certain period of time. I don't remember how many weeks it was of this strong range of motion training. What they determined was that these individuals got incredibly strong, even in ranges of motion they never used. Doesn't that make sense? Because they were fatiguing the entire muscle. Now, that's not the whole story, because what they're really getting is a myofibril effect, so density of cell, as opposed to volume of cells. So that would be like a more strength versus mass kind of effect, even though it's never quite as one or the other. There's a lot of one and little of the other sometimes, and the same vice versa. So what's important to point out is that we have a strength curve. So I want you to see the top image, and this is what we see, strength curves. Look at the top image first. So when we're in our weaker range of motion, we are capable of a small amount of weight, 1/7 what we are in the stronger range of motion, right? So, but it's not linear. There's a steep curve, like we're real powerful out here, and down here way less powerful, and then down here way less than even that. So it's not like we want to necessarily look at it in a linear fashion. It's just not. And the bone density research really proves this out here. So how do we get really heavy loads in this range of motion and then lighter loads? And the reason we want a variance in the loads is to trigger both types of muscular growth. So phase one of fatigue, when you do an X3 session, has to do with that full range, like I'm firing the whole muscle, the whole tricep, the whole pectoral, the whole deltoid, and I'm going to fatigue where everything is most powerful, where I'm capable of delivering the most amount of force. So that shows a structural deficit to the central nervous system, hence a structural adaptation. More myofibril growth, very aggressive protein synthesis, which means the muscle becomes more dense. And that's a very high power to weight ratio muscle. Then, as you go to the phase two type of fatigue, when you can't get to the strong range anymore and you're doing the shorter range, like I'm just going from here to here, so let's say I've got 100 pounds here and 300 pounds here, so I'm doing the shorter repetition, let's call them half, but it's anywhere in there, in that sort of middle space. So now, what am I fatiguing? It's not the structure of the muscle, because we already did that, which is why we can't get to full extension anymore. Now we're running out of ATP, glycogen, and creatine phosphate. We're running out of the fuels. And fuel fatigue is a different type of muscular fatigue. Now, when your central nervous system sees that you evacuate the fuels in the cell very quickly, it says, okay, it's an irritant, all exercise is an irritant. I really like using that word because it accurately tells the story of the fact that there's a point to where certain tissues in the body are really shutting down. So that process, the fuel load and storage within the cell, becomes irritated because you're out of it. And then you begin to go to fatigue in the weaker ranges of motion, even holding a lighter weight, which is very easy on the joints, but it's a deeper level of fatigue. So you're getting both the absolute maximum myofibril stimulus in that phase 1, and then that phase 2 is the diminishing range that you're getting. And I did an infographic. In fact, somebody will probably post it in the comments. An infographic showing the diminishing range of why we do that. It's super powerful. And that's also why we do one set with slightly higher repetitions. That brings me to the second part of this graphic right here, which has to do with the strength curve. This is the same curve, and we didn't draw it all the way up to 7x, so just to 5x, because the reason that the latex that people use with X3 is, let's say, 5x at extension, is because you really want to make sure that you're not denying this curve. And this is also why we do higher repetitions with X3, because you are so powerful in the stronger range of motion. And just from a bone density perspective, those momentary just engagements that are just isolated, like for example, when I push with my upper extremities to stimulate bone growth at OsteoStrong, I can put 4,000 pounds through my legs. Well, I'm not going to put 4,000 pounds through my legs with X3 or any other type of method. Like, that's why OsteoStrong is so powerful for bone. But from a muscular standpoint, I want to fatigue that stronger range of motion with multiple repetitions. And I don't want to get stuck not being able to manage my way through these midpoints, which are quite a bit weaker than the strong. So first you go to fatigue in the strong, because this is linear, the latex is linear, but you're not. So but you higher repetitions, and you end up working your way down that curve with those large repetitions, because you make sure you get to that fatigue there, and you're still using a weight that's in your capability range throughout this whole curve. So like when somebody says, yeah, I got the elite band and my workout's only like 5 reps now, it's like, nah, don't do it like that. You're not going to get great results. You'll get some myofibril probably, but you won't get the size that you're looking for. You just get the power. So let's really focus on getting both. You want to have both. So that's really the focus of today's Falsehoods of Fitness. And so don't let anybody tell you, oh, the range of motion is lighter. One of my favorite examples is somebody says, well, if you don't go full range, you don't touch a bar on your chest and the bench press, because they're like competing in the sport of the bench press. And I go, yeah, that's great. What about guys who bench with dumbbells? Because they can go down even further because they don't have a bar in the way. Are they doing a real bench press? Like, what does real mean? So for those who aren't so involved in the sport of a movement, now there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's a lot of X3 users that are using X3 as their sort of finishing set when they do the regular workout, so they are still practicing the sport of their movement. Because keep in mind, whether it's bench presses or CrossFit movements, these are skills as well as power outputs. So they got to keep that skill alive and keep in that movement pattern. They have to fire those muscles in that right order. So like a baseball pitcher doesn't decide, oh, I'm just going to bench press in the off season, I'm not going to throw a ball. No, don't do that, because you screw that up. So same kind of thing, but you don't want to get your training stimulus confused with what your sport is. So you can have a particular thing that you do, but you can also train in a certain way to optimize that thing you do and get more results out of it. So I think that concludes. Time's a little short. We got a bunch of things we got to get done today.